Hi, welcome to Leaving the Lies and Telling Your Truths. My name is Ariel Fuentes, and I'm joined by my co-host, Melody Post. How are you today, Melody?
I'm doing good. How are you, Autumn?
I'm good. On today's episode, we will be interviewing David Moise. We have known David since we were all 15. Today, David will be telling us and about his time in the house and about some experiences. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good, good.
Both
Thank
good.
you for asking. Let's go ahead and jump on into this, Mel.
Okay, well, we're going to start out really easy. When and how did you join the House of Yahweh, David?
I joined on March 17th, no, sorry, June 17th of 1988. The how was very simple. I was living with my grandfather and wanted to move with my mother, and that's where she was. And so that's how it
Okay,
That's pretty to the point.
yeah.
David, what were your first impressions of the House of Yahweh?
happened. First impressions. I'm still 14 at the time, so to me it just came with the territory. There weren't really any bad impressions. It just came with the territory. I was like, okay, a new thing to adapt to.
So let me ask you a question. Were you in any way, shape, or form religious before going to the House of Yahweh, or was this just like a new experience for you?
Not even close, and I never searched either. So I was a teenager.
Gotcha.
Right. We know that you worked for the House of Yahweh when you were there. Can you tell us what that was like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, now you're making me remember. Let's see. What was it like? Well, it was basically like volunteering involuntarily, but it also taught me a lot of things that I still use to this day. So there's the positive.
Right.
Um, I worked with a guy I wasn't exactly fond of, but again, he taught me a lot of things that I still use to this day, like how to wire a house and stuff like that.
So what were your jobs when you worked? Did you have different jobs? Did you have the same job from the time you started?
I had numerous different things I did. Almost everything you can do in construction, I've done. Not nearly enough to consider myself a professional, but I've done almost all of it. From the point of laying a foundation all the way up to the point of roofing it, and then going inside and doing all the interior stuff, wiring it, hanging the sheetrock, painting. I mean, you name it, I've done it. I also spent a lot of time in the book room, or at least that's what they used to call it when we were there,
Right.
learning how to actually. I've worked in the dark room. I've ran the printing press. I've done proofreading, and I'm looking up in my head. I'm trying to think. That's how my eyes do anything. Uh, to the point of we actually designed our own covers. We had a big cutter that we used to use to actually cut it after it's been collated, printed, you name it. If it has to do with making a book, I've got a hand in it in some way.
So, David, we've asked a lot of other people this question, so I figure we might as well add this on to here. What was your blessing or your financial compensation for the work that you did for the House of Yahweh?
Well, that's a joke. Let's see. Started out at, well, nothing. Then it became $15, which was mixed with food stamps. Then it became $25, and I was like, oh my God, I got a $10 raise. That's like 40%.
Wow.
Which was still mixed with food stamps, which they used at the time. Then once I got married and got into my own place, no longer under my parents, it got bumped up to a whole whopping $50.
Wow.
And that's what it stayed at until I went out and got my own job.
Wow.
Now, did you attend the House of Yahweh school?
Yes, I did.
And what was that like?
I'll give you a perfect example of what that was like. We had donated books. One of them was a science book. I have no idea how old this thing was. But our assignments were to do a chapter, per week. Read through a chapter and then do the questions at the end of the chapter in the book. Got up to like the 4th or 5th chapter, and there was a question in it that it asked that caused me to reread the chapter, and then I gave it to, I'm trying to remember what her name was. One of the teachers.
Susan?
No, not Susan. It was
Not
before Susan. But I gave it to one of the teachers, Yadia. I gave it to her to read. She read through it, looked at the question again, looked at me. It's not in there. That's what I said. Lo and behold, we no longer have a science being taught in the school, period.
Wow. Well, that solved that issue, I guess. That's one way of dealing with it. Science just doesn't exist anymore.
Pretty much. Well, if you think about it, science kind of contradicts House of Yahweh.
That is true. That is true. David, we know that your mother ended up marrying an elder when you were still living at home. How did that affect you?
Well, first off, he wasn't an elder when they got married.
Oh, he wasn't. Okay, I had that fact wrong. Okay.
He was unordained completely when they got married.
Okay.
How was it like? Well, let's see. Old Shaul. Before they got married, he just attempted to be my friend. So we got along well.
Right.
After they got married, never expected me to call him dad or anything, but he tried to take on that that push of dad. Right. And I wouldn't say he's a jerk, but he wasn't my dad.
Right. Did that change or get worse when he got ordained an elder, or did it change when he became an elder?
Not too much. I mean, he would push a little bit more the scriptures they read and everything, but honestly, it didn't really get any worse per se. Shaul was a nitpicker. You could ask my mother that if you ever interviewed her, if that ever happened.
And that was even before being an elder. It was just part of his personality. It wasn't based on the fact that he changed his expectations back based on his being ordained an elder.
No, I mean, I probably got a whole lot different treatment because I was his, son and stepson, whatever you want to call it.
Right. So
I may have gotten a different view of him than a lot of other people did. I didn't see it at the time, obviously, because I'm the one who's under. But once I got on the outside, I could see it a little bit different. Yeah, he treated me a little bit different. He was still hard on me like he was hard on anybody, but
right.
It was just still different. I mean, I don't really know how else to say it. It was just different.
Would you say it was more strict, like more harsh, or was he easier on you?
I think he was ever so slightly easier. Like if you were to put a percentage point to it, probably about 5 to 10% easier on me.
Wow, that's actually kind of shocking. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm actually happy to hear that.
Yeah, he still was who he was.
Right.
Do you think that you got any more leeway being an elder's child, or do you think that people looked at you in a more different light, like a stricter light, because you were an elder's quote-unquote child?
To be honest, I've never really, even to this day, at 46, I've never really given that any thought one way or the other. I guess when you look back at it in retrospect, maybe that's why I never got any counseling from anyone. Maybe that's why I was never excommunicated in the first place. It could be. Don't know.
Okay.
That's interesting.
We know that you were married. This is a two-part question. We know that you were married.
Yep.
Would you have considered getting another wife while you were married in the house?
That would be a negative.
Why is that?
It's hard enough to handle one.
So what were your overall thoughts then on...
enough to handle one.
Oh, that's true.
Right. That's true.
And to do things correctly, and there's not a person there who does it right.
Right.
No matter how many of them do it, they don't do it right. And it doesn't even matter if you believe in it or disbelieve it. If you allow me to expound.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
First off, we must remember that the Bible, which they teach, was written by men. Not men and women, by men. Therefore, men are always been considered the head of the household. Men are the ones who run everything, make the rules. They're the ones that are allowed more than one wife. Blah, 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 blah. Doesn't even matter if it's true or not, or if it's right or wrong. It's just what's taught. No matter what religion you live in. Every Bible says the same. King David had more than one wife. King Solomon had more than one wife. It was never looked down upon. What they don't teach is the proper way, if you are going to live that kind of life, to make sure that you're taking care of them properly, for one. But that's not even the most important. Make sure they're okay with it. If they're not okay with it, you don't do it. Period.
I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree. I think that's a very so basically in general so does that basically kind of just sum up your general view of the multiple marriage teaching?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see a problem with it so long as everyone involved is in complete agreement and understands what that means. If they can't get to that point, then it shouldn't be done.
Right.
It's a respect thing.
Right. No, I agree because go ahead, Autumn.
Coming to our second part of this question, how did you respond in your marriage to being the head of the household?
How did I respond? Well, having been married to Heather, who worked in the office and loved what she did, regardless of what she got for it, she did love what she did. I didn't have to really spend a lot of time with my wife, so I didn't have to really push those bounds. There really wasn't much of me having to be the head and stress that or anything. It didn't work that way between me.
What about your relationships once you left? Did it kind of flow over into them where you tried to be the head or anything like that? Or was it just a thing they taught? You were just kind of like, you know what? Whatever.
My philosophy now is pretty much the same as it's been ever since I've left. Even before I left, for that matter. I don't think it's a matter of being male or being female, but I do believe there needs to be one ultimately in charge, because you're gonna have things you don't agree on that have to have a decision made. Ultimately, who that should be, I think each family should work that out for themselves. What I personally believe for me, if I'm the major breadwinner, that kind of gives me the right. Not to be a tyrant, but to be the final say when you cannot find a way to agree.
I can see that. I mean, I can say that in my own marriage that it really depends on what the subject or the topic is. I think that, like, when it comes to certain things with dealing with our children, I think my husband tends to let me be the one to kind of make final decisions, because I think he knows that I'm a little softer than him. But obviously more of the financial stuff and the more technical kind of stuff, he tends to make the final decisions in those aspects. So we kind of divide that up depending on exactly what the decision is based on. So
right.
That's
and I also kind of think it's also to the degree that when you're in a relationship, you have to give and take. Every relationship has to have give and take.
Right.
No matter if you don't come to an agreement on certain things, a decision has to be made, this, that, whatever. Okay, whoever that may be that is that decision maker also has to always take the feelings into account of who they're with. You can't make everything about yourself, or you're not going to survive in your relationship.
That's very good. That's very good advice, David, because I mean, I agree with that 100%, because a marriage or a relationship really does have to be an amount of compromising, and sometimes you both have to give a little and meet in the middle.
Give a lot.
Yeah, sometimes. um, what are some of your positive memories of the House of Yahweh?
Positive memories of the House of Yahweh would be most, not all, but most of the teenagers when I was a teenager. Just the way we would get together for feasts, it'd be like you couldn't worry about getting mad. Just these were the people that you only got to see 2-3 times a year, period, ever. There was no time for arguments or complaining. I was about to say something. So you did your best to make everything a smile, and yes, I'm going to use the word happy.
Yeah, I agree.
Other memories that were good, things that I learned that I still apply in my life. Traits. Not traits. That's not what I was mentioning before. Things I learned as far as construction, things that have helped me in the work.
Like a trade.
Yes, trades. That's the word I was looking for. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Not a whole lot much beyond that, though.
I just kind of want to bring up a memory to both of you because we were our core group. We were in the core group of friendships. Who remembers the cassette tapes?
Oh, yeah.
I remember.
I would be running to the mailbox every day after school to see who I got a tape from. I was constantly forever in my room talking to my tape deck. And for those of you that don't know what a tape is, it's this little tiny thing that you would put into a machine and pray to God that, because I always reused the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I always got to hear the end of somebody else's letter to them because they wouldn't record all the way over it. And you would pray to God that the thing wouldn't snap so you wouldn't have to get a new one.
Oh my gosh. No, that was our old school version of Facebook because we didn't have Facebook.
Yes.
I don't have many more of mine, but I kept all mine. I never re-recorded. I wanted to keep them in case I wanted to hear them again.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Well.
Yeah.
You don't still have them, do you?
You what?
You don't still have them, do you?
No.
I was like, I don't even know if you can buy a tape recorder or a tape player anymore.
I would find him one so that we could have a special show on just listening. I would find a tape recorder.
Yes, that would be an episode in itself, wouldn't it?
I recall one of those where I was actually sitting in the tub making a tape. I don't remember who it was to, though.
That's funny.
Anyway.
David, do you have any negative memories that you remember from the House of Yahweh? And if so, can you expound on them?
How much time we have?
How about 2?
Okay, 2.
The two that stick out most.
Okay, you want generalized or specific?
Whichever you're more comfortable with.
Let's go with generalizations. Specifics will just irritate me. Generalizations. Let's see. Teachings of the house is that it's about brotherly love, putting your brothers and everyone before everything else, getting rid of everyone who's not a part of it, keeping them out of your life, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. The other teachings. No backbiting, gossiping, talking about other people behind their back, this, that, whatever. I have never been amongst a bigger group of backbiting, egotistical, hypocritical people in my entire life.
Well, just keep in mind, I'm just going to put this out there. Not everyone there was like that, and most of the people who were, it was because it was encouraged from the top down. It was actually part of the subtle way that they tried to control all of us.
It very well could be. And I understand we were House of Yahweh, but I know that these things apply to any type of cult that's out there.
Right.
So, I mean, which, Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm not going to say your name or not, but,
Right.
different ones.
Right.
And best piece of advice I can tell anyone is not necessarily going to work for everyone, mind you, but it does work for me. And that's keep eyes in the back of your head, because you never know. You don't truly know someone unless you live with them. Everyone is capable of biting you in the back. Whether they do or not is beside the point. They are capable.
Right. Under the right
You always
circumstances, I
have
would
to
agree.
watch your back.
David, when and why did you ultimately leave the House of Yahweh?
Oh, that was an actual specific incident that caused me to finally walk out. When did I stop believing? Which I know you didn't technically ask me that.
Well, you can share that too. That's fair. You can do that too.
I quit believing when I hit the age of 18, somewhere in that year. And I didn't pay my tithes. Any of them. Third, second, first. None of them. Still got ordained. Kind of fishy, would you say? Anyway, that's when that started. Why didn't I leave after that? Because I didn't have enough faith and trust in myself to just leave and just start from scratch with nothing. What caused me to literally walk out the door was I was on a job working out of town, and I called my wife at the time, who was Heather, or Heather Lee, or whatever name somebody may know her by. Heather Lee Sinclair is her original name. And I told her I was coming home because they weren't going to give me the raise that I felt worthy of. So she asked me, "What time are you getting home?" Now, mind you, when I say this, I was about 4 hours away if you drive normal. I said, "I don't know." I hung up the phone, got in my car immediately, and drove back. 2.5 hours later, I was at home to find my stepdad, Shaul, another elder, and her all moving their stuff out of our apartment.
Wait, moving
Which I'm
all of
supposed
your
to be the
stuff
head of.
or just her stuff?
Everything that was not literally only mine. If
Okay.
it was a mix of hers, or if it was just hers, they were moving it all out.
Wow.
And
Now, did this bother me? It irritated me more than anything because it was my house that I paid for.
right.
Did it bother me that they were taking her? I don't think you want me to answer that.
Well, what was the reasoning? I mean, what was the reason? Did they give you a reason why they were doing this? I mean, what was the explanation
They
you were
wouldn't
given?
even talk to me, and I didn't get a vague reason until the last time they walked out the door. And it had something to do with because I wasn't following the rules the way I was supposed to. I don't know.
And they
I'm
weren't
like,
more
then
specific than
why
that.
didn't
It
I
was
get
just
counseled by anyone?
they weren't more specific than that. Just some generalization of.
Yeah,
Okay.
just a general addition. I mean, they were accurate. Don't get me wrong, because I wasn't.
That's fair.
That's not the point. This is my house. I paid for it. They had no right to go into it and take anything.
Right.
So that, to me, was, I guess, somewhere in my head made it look as though, you know what, I have absolutely no guilt for leaving.
Right.
And that's when I finally did. It was March 13th, I believe, of 2000.
Oh, wow.
4 p.m.
Oh, wow. You left then a couple of months after me.
Not too long. My mother left in July, so it was a few months. It was 6 months after that.
Yeah, you were the end of '99, right, Autumn?
As a matter of fact, I just celebrated my 21st anniversary of leaving, October 9th,
Well done.
1999.
There we go.
What were some of the difficulties you faced after leaving, and how did you cope with them?
There were definitely some difficulties. You're walking right out of something that you're used to, whether you believe it or not. You're still in familiar surroundings. Doesn't even matter if you really like or care about the people. It's what you're so used to. And you're walking into something completely unknown. It wasn't like I was an adult when I got there. So I'd already been out in the world in that regard.
Right.
And then went back out into it. I was a kid. Teenager, mind you, early teenager, but still, I was a kid. I never had to have a job, per se. Support myself on bills and stuff like that. I didn't know what in the world I was doing. I knew how to do certain things, but it was just totally new. And then also I was lonely. I don't know why I was lonely. I just was.
Well, because you were probably used to the community.
Somebody else to hook up with.
Well, you were probably used to having community, and you didn't have community anymore. Because the House of Yahweh is like a built-in community, and you lost that.
Yeah, there were still a couple of people that I was close enough to that I actually felt close that were there, when I left.
Meaning people that you kept in contact with?
He's long since dead, but he was a really nice guy.
Meaning these are people you kept in contact with after you left, even though they probably weren't supposed to still talk to you?
No, let's nip that in the bud right now. I didn't keep in contact with anyone when I left.
Okay, I misunderstood that then. Okay.
In fact, if it wasn't for certain people contacting me years after the fact, I probably still wouldn't be. Not because I dislike it. It's just that's not who I am.
Right.
So
I'm not the reach out type anymore. I felt like I gave all that away while I was there.
Right.
Okay. But you are thankful that people have reached out and reconnected.
Yes, some people. Most people who have reconnected with me, yes, I'm definitely that.
I mean, we all know Melody's everybody's ride or die, so I'll just take it as it is.
Hey, I honestly, I'm not going to own that title, especially since I had to Google it and found out what it was. And I'm like, no, I don't think this really describes me.
Now I'm gonna Google it. Don't let me show my age.
Oh my gosh. So, David, do you have any words of advice for anyone that is still in the House of Yahweh that might be having doubts or considering leaving?
Oh, I definitely have words, but it's whether they take it or not is completely up to them.
Right.
I didn't have this when I left. It was more anger that prodded me than anything. But what somebody needs to do is they need to learn how to have faith and trust in themselves. It's not an easy process. It takes years and years and years to learn how to do this. I'm still not fully there, but I'm there way more than I was when I left. Ultimately, that's really what it boils down to. It's willpower and belief in yourself, not letting people bash you down. We're not the weak people that we were taught to be while we were there. None of us are.
That's very good advice. I agree with that 100%. And I can tell you that it took me a long time to find myself in that way too. That is part of all the healing process that I think pretty much anybody who's been part of a cult or controlling group like that has to almost rebuild that part of themselves from the ground up. And I think even more so for people who either went in as children or even as teenagers like we did. We weren't young children, but we were all teenagers. And I think that you miss that foundation because you're part of that group when you're supposed to be going through those transitions, and you don't go through those transitions in a normal, progressive, proper way that most of the world does. So when you come out, you feel very almost lost and feel you don't have faith in yourself because you feel that sense of loss. You just can't. You've got to find your footing, and that's very hard to do when you haven't been taught how to do it without that group there supporting you.
And everybody takes a different path as far as how they reach where they're going to get. I would not suggest people to take my path because I've burnt some relationships along the way. Anger's not the way to go. It works for me, mind you, don't get me wrong, but it's not the way to go.
Well, I think probably all of us went through an angry stage, David, so don't beat yourself up too bad about that, because I can tell you that is basically you're grieving when you leave, and anger is part of that process. And I certainly can tell you there are things that I was angry about. I can tell you I was angry I didn't get an extended education, because before the House of Yahweh, I had planned to go to college and get a better education. But when I was in the House of Yahweh, I thought, well, why would I waste my time and money doing that when the world's going to end? And I know that I knew I wanted to be a mother. So I'm like, well, if I have to choose between getting an education and becoming a mom, I'm going to choose a mom, because the world's going to end anyway, and I might not have a chance to do that again. So
Can I ask you something on the line of logic?
Absolutely.
It doesn't make any applications to right now, mind you, the way we live now.
Right.
But it just struck me as really funny. If the world was ending, why would you want to bring another kid into it?
I think for me, it was just that since I was a child, I played with baby dolls, and I believed that because we were part of the House of Yahweh, that even if the world was ending, David, we were all protected, and that included my baby. So
That's a good point.
yeah, I believed that my baby wouldn't really be affected by that. My baby was going to be one of the protected ones.
I can see that.
So, okay, David. Well, we thank you so much for your time today. And in closing, I'm going to thank also my lovely co-host, Autumn, who is beautiful as always. And thank you for your willingness to interview with us today, David. And thank you for sharing your story and your experiences with us. We greatly appreciate that, and you taking the time. And if there is anyone out there who is either an ex-member of the House of Yahweh or an ex-member of any cult or organization, and you are interested in sharing your story and coming on the show, please contact either myself or Ariel. I call her Autumn, but Ariel, if you're looking for her on Facebook, or you can leave us a message in our group. And again, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. We thank you. I thank you both for joining me today, and both of you have a very good night, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.